Lifting is the best exercise of all, period, to help you to maintain your youth, to help you to maintain lean muscle mass. I probably don't even think about, I'm doing this to do that. To me, it's more of like, I have to do this every day. The ability to say, we're going to identify foods that are getting people in trouble, the junk foods that people most like to eat, and we're going to figure out how to make those junk foods be not junk foods. Definitely more people coming to the realization that they have to take control over their health. At the same time, I also see like a big push from pharma to continue to make pharma be the answer to our health. When you see like weight loss drugs now becoming a trend, it's like, hey, you being overweight is not a health condition you have control over. You being overweight is a disease, and we have the medicine for you. That's troubling to me. Keeping us sick and keeping us medicated is going to be an ongoing push. So we do have to get smarter and louder about taking control of our own health and nutrition.
I love it, man. Yemini, brother, welcome to the show. It's an honor to have you on, man.
Oh, man, it's an honor to be here. And anytime I get to sit down and chat with you is a good time. So I'm looking forward to it.
I love it, brother. We have a lot to jump into, everything from times at Quest, challenges you've had in different brands, how you've overcome them. The first question I have is, how are you more jacked 20 years later than you were 20 years ago today? I feel like every time I see you, you're getting leaner and leaner. How do you do that? How do you maintain that physique?
Well, thank you. And I'm definitely not more jacked than I was in my 20s. I was competing in bodybuilding then, but it's a lifelong thing for me. It's my lifestyle. I'm not like working out, to look good on a certain day, or I'm not on some new fad diet because I have to look a certain way by a certain time. It's a day-to-day thing. And I've probably cultivated just a bunch of great habits over a lifetime of doing this that I don't even think about, that help me to stay as young as possible.
What are some of those?
There's a lot to do in this world. So it's like my goal has shifted, obviously, in life, in my 20s, being into bodybuilding and only caring about one thing and one thing only, and that's how much muscle am I building today. To believe it or not, that actually has, in the last few years, become a priority again in the pursuit of youth, just because I understand how critically important it is to maintain lean body mass, and how we just start to lose it, whether we like it or not, as we get older, unless we do something about it. So it's kind of almost come full circle, because for a minute there, building muscle was not a big thing for me. I wasn't thinking about it, but then I started realizing, I'm going to have to make this a priority again if I want to maintain any kind of level of muscularity.
And what are some of those staple habits that you have now? Like, what are some things that just come second nature to you?
Well, like, for example, even if I happen to be on vacation and it's like a free for all because I'm going to be enjoying whatever different foods and stuff when I'm traveling, even then I always instinctively earn my stuff. So I don't just wake up one morning and just start pigging out and eating all day long and then doing nothing. Like, I actually, just by my nature, want to get up and do something physical and work up an appetite and earn whatever delicious thing I may be eating, later that day or throughout the day. So that's one thing. I kind of always make myself earn what I'm going to indulge in. So that would be one. Lifting, you would think, okay, yeah, big deal lifting, but it is the best exercise of all, period, resistance training, to help you to, even if you don't care about being big and muscular, to help you to maintain your youth, to help you to maintain lean muscle mass. And I probably don't even think about, I'm doing this to do that. To me, it's more of like, I have to do this every day. I gotta go train. It's just part of my routine, my habits. And so, for a lot of people, consistency is an issue. For some reason, they've never figured out how to make this part of what, like just brushing your teeth. You just do it. So that would be another one. It's just part of what I do.
Amazing. What about protein?
And then food consumption, I would imagine, just, over the years, have understood the different ways of eating, whether it's a ketogenic diet or something more balanced. But ultimately, in terms of maintaining your weight, it's just the amount of food that you're eating. And in some cases, limiting what some of those foods might be helps you to do that. And for in other cases, it doesn't. But I have a general overall feel for how much I'm eating every day, and I can manage that. That becomes probably a lot more difficult to do unless you've been, you've put yourself through counting calories and macros and all that several times, and start to gain a real good understanding for that. But it's now become just part of without even thinking, that's what I'm doing.
Amazing. And so I want to jump into, you've had an incredible career, been involved with so many different companies that a lot of people will recognize: Breyers, MedRx, Quest Nutrition. And I want to start with Quest because I think that's an iconic brand that everyone's heard of. You joined them, I believe, in 2013. What was it like then? Like, everyone knows Quest Nutrition today. 2013, I think things were a bit different. And so what was kind of the locker room, or what was that environment like back in 2013?
It's pretty interesting. I got a call from someone that I knew in the industry, who was working with Quest Nutrition at the time, and they needed help getting the bars into a particular account that I happened to have a relationship with. And so through that introduction, I met Ron. He was the first of the three founders that I met, and had a great conversation with him. Right away, I was like, wow, this is a totally different character here. Really smart and saying some crazy shit that they're going to accomplish. So I'm thinking, like, sure. But some pretty bold goals already from the very beginning. The first time we met in person, Quest offices were in Compton, California, and they were in this little rundown building. And it was just two offices, really, and everybody was sitting on buckets, and there was no chairs, no office furniture. And I remember sitting down with Ron and just having a cool, long conversation. But we were in this very dimly lit room, sitting on two orange buckets. And then anytime somebody needed to have a private meeting, they would just go out into the parking lot and go into a car and have their private meetings there. So it started like that. But literally, in that initial conversation, he made all kinds of bold claims and statements that I thought were like so over the top, but said with such confidence that I'm like, like we're going to cure cancer. Like, that was one of the things that he was saying. I'm like, with a protein bar, like, what are you talking about? So that's how it started. And I eventually met the other two founders, Mike and Tom. Ended up developing a great relationship with Tom, and ultimately ended up working in his side of the business on the sales and marketing part of the business. But yeah, in the very beginning, the actual mission of the company was still hotly being debated, and it was starting to take form, and how the company was going to be laid out in order for it to be as successful as it was just happening. So it was, for someone like me who's in business, who up until that point had already had a lot of great experience with a lot of different types of companies at different levels of size and success and all of that, to get to go into an environment where it's total startup, things are anything but certain, lots of goals and dreams, but nothing guaranteed. And then to see it slowly, I shouldn't say slowly, quickly, I should say, take form and then become what it was in such a short period of time was an amazing experience. I enjoyed it very much and learned a ton.
And I think there's so much magic in that, because it'll be interesting for people, because they see, and you go anywhere now and you see a Quest bar, but most people don't realize the humble beginnings that Quest started at, right? And Ron had this vision, Tom had this vision, right? They all had this vision that they believed in, and truly the entire company. I've never walked into a place before where everyone bought into that vision, and it was spectacular back in those days when you walked in.
You nailed it. That is one of the key things, the fact that enough people in the company truly believed in what we were doing, made a big difference. So, like, in my world, because I really believed in what we were doing and how successful that could potentially be, it allowed me to really think about, all right, if I'm going to build a sales department from scratch, like, how do you do it right? Like, if you do everything the way you're supposed to, and not cut any corners or not try to just grow sales for this heck of growing stuff. If you just truly do everything right, how will it work out? And it's only because I believe that everybody else was doing everything totally right in the company that allowed me to go, all right, let's do this properly. And we did, and it turned out to work out, much better than ever.
And regardless of what people think about the bars or anything today about the company, the reality is Quest Nutrition changed the world. Legitimately changed the world, changed the market as we know it in the term of protein being delivered through functional foods in a way that's yummy and delicious, that isn't like back in earlier days, it was like, oh, cool, I'm eating this like protein rock, but like I'm going to eat it because I'm a bodybuilder, but I'm not enjoying it. They were the first ones to kind of break through on a mass market scale where it was like, this thing tastes like cookie dough. And I think now you look today and there's protein bars everywhere. There's a ton of things in the market, but I think that crazy out of the world mentality that Ron still has to this day, and we'll talk about some of the new ventures that you're involved with him. It's just like, you need that level of excitement and that level of curiosity and vision that most people could never see. And I remember walking into Quest and like, there are things that still have never seen the market today that were being worked on in 2015 that were just like mind blowing. It's like, this is made out of protein only, no carbs, and still has never been launched, and no companies even, but that level of curiosity sparked an R&D and a marketing department that was just out of this world. And I've never seen anything like it.
I haven't either. There's not many companies in our space of health food and healthy snacks and all of that have a legitimate R&D department that sitting there day in and day out thinking of how to innovate. Most companies don't even have one person in their entire department or company devoted to R&D. It's really usually something that's outsourced, or they're copycatting products or whatever. But that's the other thing too. It's almost kind of like until somebody broke that 4-minute mile, no one thought it would be possible. And once somebody did, a bunch of other people did so as well. Quest was very innovative in bringing together things that are actually truly good for you, not pretend good for you, and then actually making them taste amazing. Up until that, I didn't think that was possible. I thought it's okay. It's one or the other. You're going to have something that's got the right amount of protein, carbs, and fats, and not a bunch of fillers and junk and all that, but it's not going to taste that great. So the ability to say, no, we're going to identify the foods that are getting people in trouble, the junk foods that people most like to eat and tend to overeat, and we're going to figure out how to make those junk foods be not junk foods. And that's in essence okay, what else can we make besides a bar? And that's why you saw so many incredible innovations that were being developed there. Some have been launched, and like you said, some have yet to see the light of day. But it's a very exciting environment. I honestly can say, and I've worked with either directly or as a consultant or as a broker for hundreds of companies. I've yet to see one even come close to duplicating the R&D efforts that Quest had in place. I don't know what they do today. It's honestly, I've been far removed from the company, but at least during the heyday, there was only one department that had more employees than R&D, and that was my department, the sales team, because we had a bunch of people all over the place out in the field. Other than sales, that was the largest department.
I think one day there should be like a Netflix special on like building the $1 billion brand of Quest, like kind of going back and revisiting those times when it's just like, hey, you'd walk in and it's like a group of scientists, thought leaders, people around a desk, and it's like, what can we solve? And that was just like the mentality of Ron and you and the team at Quest, and it was just incredible.
Definitely give Ron a lot of credit for that. I mean, that is who he is. He is a problem solver. He is a very, very curious person who also happens to be like super smart. So to have a heck of a combination for somebody.
And I agree. I think he's an incredible human being, and I think one of the biggest testaments to this, and I believe you were there at the time of this IMO versus soluble corn fiber debacle that most people are like, what are you even talking about? But like, there was this point in time. I don't know if you could tell the story of like when there was a switch between Quest Nutrition changed from using IMO, this sort of fiber, isomalto-oligosaccharide, this fiber that was in their bar that made it nice and soft and chewy. But there were some things that came to light, and like overnight, they switched to soluble corn fiber. Can you tell a little bit about your perspective on that?
Man, that was crazy, crazy times. Like that was my real first experience in like the internet getting angry and people coming out with pitchforks and all that comes along with that. But leading up to that, Quest, part of what made the bars as special as they were is that for the first time you had something that was very high in protein and actually very low in net carbs. And part of how we got down to those low net carbs was through adding fiber to the bar. So you're replacing digestible carbohydrates with non-digestible carbohydrates and in essence bringing down the net carbs. The original fiber that was used in the bars achieved that. It was in fact a real fiber called chicory root. And we very quickly learned that that one came with some trade-offs, namely a lot of GI distress, a lot of gassiness. People were like, I'm eating these bars, I'm getting gassy, what's going on? And so we realized, oh, this fiber that we're using, this chicory root, is causing GI distress. So let's get an alternative. And we found an alternative, IMO, isomalto-oligosaccharide. And that not only made the bars easier to digest, but it also made them even tastier. And on that fiber, the bars just exploded and grew. And not only did Quest bars begin using IMO, but all the Quest bar knockoff competitors also started to use IMO. So suddenly you had an entire bar market full of low carb bars that in truth were moderate low carb bars, because IMO is not a full blown digestible carbohydrate, but as it turns out, it is partially digestible. And it also, by the way, depended on people's gut biomes. But generally speaking, most people who eat IMO are going to convert it to glucose to some extent or another. And so we figured that out quick. And as soon as we did, there was like zero hesitation from the company. We're like, we need to find an alternative fiber immediately because this doesn't meet what our standards are. And an alternative fiber was found, soluble corn fiber. And we were cautious. We didn't want to just make a crazy overnight change in case people weren't happy with potential textural changes or who knows. So we tested the new fiber on 2 flavors that we launched that were new. If I recall, I think chocolate mint was one of them, and I forget what the other one was, like Rocky Road or something. I don't know, but they were very successful, and there was no issues, and no one complained. And so we thought, great, this is good to go. Let's switch everything over, and we did. Sadly for us, at the same time that we made the change in fiber, one of our protein suppliers made a change in their protein spec. It wasn't even the actual protein itself. Some spec in the protein changed, but enough of a change that it reacted with the new formula in a way that made the bars literally rock hard. And so at the same time that we changed the whole line, we launched for the very first time in the company's history a seasonal flavor during the fall, which was the first ever Quest pumpkin bar.
Yeah.
And we had literally record-breaking sales of that SKU. We did more sales of that one SKU than most companies in our space could ever hope to do in a lifetime. It was a lot of revenue. And then, unfortunately, months later, we started to get the feedback from consumers like, "Hey, what's going on? The bars are rock hard. Did you guys change something?" And then people started looking at the ingredients to see, did something change? And they started noticing a fiber with the word corn in it. What is this soluble corn fiber? And so people jumped on the word corn and thought, oh my God, Quest is sold out. They've put corn in their product, and that's why it's turning rock hard. And so, to make a very long story short, it took that amazing R&D department quite a while to uncover that protein spec change. And in doing so, realized, oh my goodness, it's not, because they were thinking, oh, it's the fiber. It must be the fiber that we've changed. Like, what else could it be? And so a lot of effort, energy, and time was spent in trying to understand what was going on there and how to fix it, while the internet was ablaze with people angry about, you guys, they were angry for good reason. Something they love and hold dear that they're used to consuming on a regular basis is totally different now and changing. and there's no alternative. And so people were pissed. So it cost the company a lot. The company took a significant step back in terms of just overall size of the company, and it was very costly. But ultimately, they have to get the credit for doing the right thing, because they didn't have to do that. Quest could have easily just said, you know what, the FDA doesn't even know anything about this. They don't even understand what's going on. We're technically not violating any labels. All of our competitors are still selling IMO, so we might as well just keep writing this and not make any changes. But that's not what the company was about. That's not what Ron, Mike, and Tom would have ever even contemplated doing. And so they did the right thing. They made the change. They made the product better. It's the product that's out there today. As far as I know, I haven't done any tests on it recently, but it's a legitimate high protein, low carb bar that the nutritions are what the label says.
And I think that's one of the craziest stories of like the industry, because to your point, they deserve all the credit in the world of they didn't have to make that decision. They made that decision because they got insight and intel that, hey, this is actually spiking blood glucose. And that wasn't what the company was about. They were like, no, we need to go towards something different. And it ended up backfiring short term, helping long term. And I remember it was like this crazy. I remember seeing videos of people taking their pumpkin bars and like throwing them at walls, and like it wouldn't budge. It was like people were banging them, like people were hammering nails with these bars, and I'm like, oh my gosh, what just happened?
I laugh about how we were so stressed out. We were like, what is happening here? And my office was not far from the R&D teams. I would be in there like, what is it? Have we figured this out? And it was like weeks would go by, and we kept seeing more angry people. And then I'm in charge of the wholesale business, so we've got all of our distributors and retailers with massive returns, and so they're taking all of the pumpkin revenue. All of that came back,
Man.
and rightfully so. It needed to be exchanged. So let that be a lesson for anyone out there in terms of maintaining super tight control over your ingredients and knowing what the heck's going on. Even for a company that had that much at its disposal and that many smart people working on it, we had a massive challenge in dealing with it.
Incredible. It's incredible. Every time I'm like, it's mind blowing to me that took place. But now to see them overcome that, right? Most companies, that could bury them. That would literally bury them, and it would just be like, cool, you're done, because you lose a lot of trust from your consumers. They're like, what the heck just happened? And most people were coming out, to your point, saying Quest sold out. They went with this cheaper corn fiber, and actually it was more expensive than I am, way more expensive. And it's like, if you only knew, but consumers see something wrong and immediately go to blame and go, you're cutting corners, when that wasn't the case.
And you know what? For good reason they think that, because in most cases that is exactly what most companies are doing, and you blame the consumer for thinking worst case scenario. Quest in particular, though, built, I think, its reputation on being a high quality, reputable brand, and so when you have something like this happen, it's an extra big deal. And so, but they've done a phenomenal job of not just pivoting that and totally turning it around, but they're bigger now, and they've gone even broader. An amazing assortment. We launched the Quest chips, I think around, was it 16, 17? I forget what year it was, but well ahead of their time. And look at that product now. I mean, that product is on fire. The new ones, the black label ones, have you tried those?
So good.
Jesus criminy, those are amazing. Like, whoever needs to eat real chips anymore, those do it.
Exactly. One of the things I want to talk about, you had an incredible strategy that I think could be a lesson for some companies that are launching, that's very counterintuitive to what most people would do. And I remember you telling me that like there were people, Wal-Mart, Target, all these companies were like knocking down Quest door and was like, we want your bar. And you were like, no. And you had this strategic approach to it where most people would be like, oh my gosh, I want to get into stores. I want to do that. And then they go to stores. Why? What was your rationale? What was the reasoning behind you were like, let's build up demand first and then wait for people to be ravenous fans, and then we launch in store? What's the thought process behind that?
A lot of that had to do with my experience over the years in what happens when you go too fast, too wide. And we made all the mistakes that could possibly be made in that area when I worked with Metrex many, many, many years earlier. The company was in a similar position to Quest back in the day in that it had found a tremendous success within a core consumer audience and a specialty channel. But clearly there was an opportunity to go way broader with that product. And so we did. But in doing so, we did it too fast. And so, like, for example, Costco wanted our product. We're like, oh my gosh, Costco placed a bigger order than any of our other distributors combined. And so we're like, of course. Little did we know that was going to come at the expense of our specialty business, because you've got all these mom and pop stores that had been doing great volume with the product and happily supporting it. And then suddenly they're seeing it across the street at Costco being sold for less than what they pay for at wholesale. Wow. So they're like, what is happening here? So a lot of upset wholesalers who ended up discontinuing the product, and in losing that base of retailers that, you know, help you to launch and get new customers, it hurt us overall, and it prevented us from growing as big as I thought we could have. So with Quest, that's just one example of many, by the way, of ways that you can go faster than you should. With Quest, right away, just in the second year of the company being in business, we had every retailer wanting the product because it was doing so well online, and there was such excitement about the brand on social, which was pretty new at the time. Yes, social marketing was a new thing when this was going on. But all of that created all this noise that retailers suddenly wanted the product. That's a very different scenario than most companies find themselves in, where there's not enough demand for their product yet. And so they're out there knocking on doors, trying to get shelf space. It puts you in a totally different position with the retailer, where in one scenario they want your product, and another they're like, we've got all these other products that are trying to get on shelf. So you end up having very little leverage. And in that case, you end up having to do a lot of things like paying slotting fees and committing to ad programs that may or may not work yet, are, you know, super expensive. All of that just to be on shelf. And maybe your product works, maybe it doesn't, but you've spent a lot of money just to find that out.
Right.
It's better to really build that brand, get some demand, and if you want to roll out into retail, identify, all right, where in retail am I the best fit? Where are my customers most likely to go? And where can I have a relationship with a retailer that I can build success around, and then go off of that. If you happen to be one of the lucky brands that's done such a phenomenal job, they've got all these retailers coming at you, it is tempting to be like, oh, of course, like, we want to grow. Let's sell the product everywhere. But even then, you want to have enough infrastructure in place or enough ability to manage that business successfully before going too broad. So in our case, Walmart, as you mentioned, they saw the product, and right away they're like, this is something we want. And they were making a big push by growing that category themselves, and they were looking for the brands that were going to help them to do that. But for us, it would have been catastrophic at the time to just suddenly go national with Walmart. We had multi-million-dollar businesses with retailers like GNC and the Vitamin Shop. They would not have been happy about that. They're already pissed at each other that we were like, sometimes we'd give them one flavor ahead of the others, and all hell would break loose over that. And so we were managing that as effectively as we could. But in saying no to Walmart for the few years that we did, when we were finally ready to take on that retailer, it turned out to be a record-breaking launch because they so wanted it at that time. They actually came, I mean, this has never happened to me before, but they flew their entire management team to our office to pitch to us why it would make sense for Quest to be on Walmart shelves.
Wow.
And then ultimately we agreed under some, conditions that I thought were fair, which included having the whole section where Quest would be housed be its own section with premium shelving that would help the brand stand out for the premium brand that it is. I had seen a similar thing happen in the cosmetics departments, where Walmart a few years earlier had a hard time attracting some of the premium cosmetic brands because for some reason they didn't want to tarnish their brand in a Walmart store. So they created this really cool premium cabinetry and lighting and all that to to create that section for them. So we ended up doing the same thing for Quest. And not only did we get on the shelf, I mean, we had end caps in all the stores, and a full family of products in the Walmart section, and it turned out to be a record-breaking launch. So if you have a great product that you believe in, and you're doing good marketing, wholesale almost takes care of itself. When you don't have a good enough product, it's some kind of Me Too product, and you're not able to effectively market it and create a big demand, you're going to be going up the hill, knocking on doors and trying to get on retailer shelves.
It's great advice. I think there's a lot that people can take away from that. Two more things on Quest. One is, as you guys were gearing up towards this $1 billion exit, right? Unicorn brand, only so many companies can get to that point. What does that look like? Give us a sneak peek of what that looks like in the locker room, right? What does that look? Are people running around with their heads cut off? Are people like just calm, cool, collective, excited? What's the locker room like in that environment?
It's pretty amazing. One of the things that I thought made Quest, that allowed Quest to achieve the success that it did, is not that there was no corporate politics or drama or things like that, because especially when a company gets bigger and bigger, those things are unavoidable. But they were so little compared to other companies that I've worked with or consulted for. There was only execution. It's just execution. So if we had it down to a science where something comes out of R&D and we had a sequence by which something gets launched, and everyone knows their part. And I'm thinking back toward the last couple of years when things were, I guess, more put together and humming. To get to that point was chaotic. I mean, there was a lot of, no one's ever done this before. And so literally somebody figuring it out as they're going, and then realizing, well, there's people out there that know how to do this shit. So let's hire professionals that can come in and help elevate to the next level. I came in at that stage, the first year and a half of chaos, I was not part of all of that. Suddenly they realized, okay, if we're going to go to wholesale, we know enough to be dangerous. We know that we probably shouldn't go everywhere all at once, but we need somebody who knows what the heck they're doing. So I came in with experience and understanding how to have a channel strategy that was going to be beneficial. But not every part of the company got all that stuff figured out right away. There was hiccups and growing pains and figuring things out as we went along. But even then, it's pretty amazing when you think about, you had three guys that somehow figured out how to kind of divide and conquer, and each kind of manage their own section of the company. And you would think there was a lot of strategic discussions and planning. There was not enough of that for me. Like, I'm a planner, I'm a strategic thinker, and in my world, everything was done that way. So, my entire sales force and sales organization was done that way. There's other parts of the company, like Ron and his team, were not that way at all. It was very much chaotic and done differently. Nick and Tom, who did all of the marketing, that marketing department also grew to be quite big. Also, it was run in what I never quite understood it. It was very chaotic to me. So, yet it all came together somehow. There was very little time wasted on bullshit and a lot of time focused on just execution. And then we were, as crazy as the numbers were, and I think back to some of those insane numbers that we're hitting now, at the time, there was no time to even let that sink in, because we had these loftier even goals. I mean, we were thinking $1 billion revenues. We're going to get to $1 billion. And so how does that happen? Okay, well, this year, that means we got to get to 400 million this year. And how is that going to happen? And so we had all of the areas to look at. All right, where's the growth going to come from, and so on and so forth. So it was that.
Amazing. Last question regarding Quest is, do you think a company like Quest could ever be built again?
Oh, yeah. And I think even bigger for sure. I look now at some of the companies that I've done some consulting work with, and many of them have already exceeded what Quest did on the online side of the business. So whereas Quest at one point may have been doing whatever, $30, $40 million online between their D2C business and Amazon or whatever, you've got companies now that are eclipsing some of those numbers. And so if they know what they're doing, or if they have a halfway decent strategy for rolling out into wholesale, they could completely surpass some of those revenue numbers. And I think there's companies now, I mean, when you think of it, isn't Kind Bar? I think Kind Bar is technically a $1 billion revenue company. I mean, that's pretty much all bars that those guys are doing. So that's pretty respectable.
It's amazing.
But yeah, I do think that, I mean, there's so much more possibility today. And with the advent of AI, I can't even, my brain can't even comprehend the magnitude by which something could scale and grow if, if all the things are done right.
Right. So let's fast forward to after Quest. You go to this company called No Foods, one of the first companies to launch an allulose-based product, right?
Yep.
Kind of super innovative. Obviously, now allulose is more known than it was back then. Talk to me a little bit about what that was like, stepping into this, like, hey, well, you just kind of come from Quest. Now you're launching kind of similar category, but different in terms of, like, it was more bread-based products, right? Like cookies, breads, all allulose-based though. What was that like?
That was real interesting. I was approached by Steve, the CEO at the time, and he was modeling much of what he was doing after what was going on at Quest. He admired a lot of what we had done, and I don't remember how we originally connected, but it was through allulose, I believe, and he had some questions about our strategy for marketing allulose, and I spent some time chatting with him, and in chatting with him, got to learn a bit more about what he was doing, and was intrigued. He ended up sending a bunch of the products, which I tried, and I was like, wow, like that's a lot of, like, it's a broad assortment that this guy's already got out into the market. Probably too wide. I would probably want to kind of narrow it down and see which one of these takes off, and then potentially kind of go from there. But anyway, long story short, I was impressed by the number of people that had become involved in that company, whether it be as advisors, consultants, or outright investors. And there was some names on there that were investors that are people who I consider to be significant thought leaders in our space, who I have a tremendous amount of respect for. And when I saw, wow, they're associated with this project, I'm open to doing it. And I ended up joining them as head of sales and marketing to help them expand their products, similarly in a way to what we had done at Quest. But man, what an experience that was, because unlike Quest, which was founded by just three guys who, fronted the money themselves, and it wasn't until many, many years later that venture capital came in. This company was like a investor venture capital, like, smorgasbord. Because there was over 200 investors in this company on the cap table. And as I got to learn more about how the company was being operated, I just realized it's not how I like to do it. It's not wrong. It's just not how I like to do it. It's sure. Everything was built around how to build wealth and how to have a lucrative exit. Nothing wrong with any of those things whatsoever. But if that's the goal, if that's the end goal, then you end up doing a lot of things that I don't align with how I like to do business. Right. I eventually became the CEO of that company and tried to make an aggressive push in growing it, but in doing so, realized it's an uphill battle to take my vision and try to implement it into a company that has that many investors with that many opinions and thoughts about where this company should be going and what it should be doing. So I realized, okay, I think I'm at a place now in life where I should be doing this for myself rather than for another company, as I have been for most of my career. And you and I actually were chatting around that time, and it happened to be right at the peak of the entire keto diet craze, I should say. And I thought, man, I see this happening all over again. What happened with low carb? There's going to be a flood of shitty keto products. All these people are going to be buying these keto diet products, and then realize that the keto diet doesn't work because these products don't make them feel well, much like what happened with low carb during the Atkins craze. I thought we should bring some products that actually are keto, that are going to help some folks, stick to their ketogenic diet. And that's where Heka was born. And so I thought there's room for a decent keto snack bar, because everything else that was available at the time either was just not really keto because the macros were not legit, or if they were keto, they had ingredients that would wreck your stomach, like chicory root, as that we had learned years earlier with Quest bars. Or if they actually did have like clean ingredients and keto macros, they tended to be like very high calorie. They're just like a big 300 plus calorie bar. And I knew that most people who were jumping on this were looking for a way to lose weight. So I'm like, we got to bring something to market that's low calorie, keto macros, tastes delicious. And that's where I went to work on developing that bar, and then that's what we launched.
So I want to jump into Heka. Before we do that, in No Foods, I call it Chipgate, whatever we want to call it, with dissecting. I think it's an important story that a lot of people have probably already heard of, but I want to, from an internal standpoint, and I know you weren't even privy to the insights on this, but want to get your perspective on that. But I remember there was a whole commotion around, you guys had one of the biggest cookies at the time. It was like a muffin top mixed with a cookie. I mean, the thing was tasted phenomenal right. Cookie. And I remember, I think it was Keto Connect or someone does this video, literally like science project, dissects the cookie, pulls out the chocolate chips and weighs them. And like, the internet, it's probably similar to the IMO soluble corn fiber, like whole thing. The internet erupts. And all of a sudden, I remember, I think I called you and I'm like, yo, what's up? And you're like, you wouldn't believe the amount of customer service we're trying to deal with right now. And I just remember people erupted because there was more sugar or more chocolate chips in the formula than there were supposed to be. What was that like? What happened with that?
That was insane. Again, and what a crazy time. So during this time, I'm working out of the California office that I opened, and we'll call this our sales and marketing office. And then the company was headquartered in Atlanta, Georgia, where everything else was being managed. The accounting, the finance, product development, everything else other than sales and marketing. And I don't actually remember how it first started to become a thing that entered my radar that there may be more sugar in these cookies than the label says. Now, mind you, prior to this, I've consumed this product. I've checked my own blood glucose response against it. Very smart people, like I mentioned before, way smarter than me, have put their hard-earned money as investors into this company. I actually don't want to say their names, so I don't even know if they ever want to be associated with it. But anyhow, so I'm thinking that it would be crazy for this product to not have the legit ingredient, whatever, nutritionals. But I asked the CEO at the time, I'm like, how confident are you that our labels do in fact reflect what is in this product? And he's like, 100%. We would not mess with that. I'm like, okay, that needs to be true, because let me tell you right now, all it'll take is for one person to take all the chips out and weigh them and show the contrary. And he's like, wow, I have no concern. Literally the next day, Keto Connected, 1, 2. And I show him, I'm like, what did I tell you? So what this has clearly is like 3 times the amount of chocolate chips than the cookie is supposed to have. And the response was, but the blood glucose response doesn't happen. I'm like, it doesn't matter. I mean, I understand why, because it was so high in fat that it actually provided enough of a buffer for you not to have a big glycemic response, but it doesn't matter. And so, that was a nightmare. So having learned from the Quest experience, I'm like, we need to be as transparent as humanly possible on this. We need to literally announce, that we're making either a label change or a formula change or something's going to change. But clearly, we have to be transparent about it. So,
and do you think that was part of the quote unquote demise or the fall of No? Was that was like I remember that was a pivotal point, and all of a sudden it was just like, a lot of people in the low carb keto space were like, we can't trust anything from now. So a part of this trust was forever lost. Or do you think it was just a big dagger they could have recovered?
I believe have easily overcome that. And I, while it was a big setback, I don't, it wasn't, it was amazing to me how many people loved that product and that brand. There was a ton of people saying, oh, like, just let us know, change it. We still love the product. I was like, wow, there's a lot to work with here. What really ultimately was the demise of the brand was that a brand needs to have an internal champion, somebody who is the diehard believer of that brand, and that person needs to create a team around them who gets infected and also believes in what's going on. That the brand had no soul. When the founder left, I took over, and when I left, I think the investors were looking at this and going, unless we find somebody who this is what they believe in, we're not going to be able to go forward with this brand. So
Right.
I think they ultimately just folded. I don't know how they ended up shutting it down, but it's not there anymore.
Wild experience. And so then you transition into Heka, right? And you're coming in, you said, we need to disrupt this category. We need to provide something that is legitimately not going to spike your blood glucose. I remember early on, there were some challenges with the bar. Like it was a little oily, like some challenges early on. How do you work through that? And what were some of those challenges that you faced early on when launching Heka?
Yeah, to me, I couldn't believe that we managed to develop the product that we did and have version 1 be as awesome as it was. You got to remember, I mentioned that when I worked at Quest, there was it was a 40-person R&D department. So 40 people plus Ron and all those smart brains developing all these great products. So how the heck am I going to develop a product that could even come to market and eventually compete at that level? And it took me a long time to meet a lot of formulators who had the technical capabilities to make things taste great, coupled with my knowledge of ingredients and what the formulas needed to be. And I knew that whatever we developed needed to just be good enough for the core keto consumer who was looking for a legit keto alternative to all the junk that was out there. It didn't need to be good enough for the average mainstream consumer who's eating Snickers bars. I wasn't going to go out and try to replace that yet. That would be eventually part of the goal. But if I could just bring that first generation version to the market, then we can always work on finding ways of improving it. And the first opportunity for improving the product was in the summer months. It would get more oily and it would get messy. And so we have to figure out, how do we maintain the level of fat that this product needs in order for it to be keto? And how do we find a way to have it be more of a firm bar and potentially even improve on the texture? And so it's not easy. It's literally just iterating formulas after formulas after formulas and testing benchtop sample after benchtop sample until you hit on something that's like, oh, this is way better. And then we go from there.
Yeah. And then one of the things that was most amazing about Heka is in such a short period of time, you built this ridiculously strong tribe. Like, how critical was that to some of Heka's early on success? Like it was just like this insane community coming together, and you did a great job cultivating that.
That was the most important part of our overall defining the brand and marketing in general, because unlike most companies who understand that there's benefits to be gained from having a effective influencer marketing campaign, where most people fail to truly build something like that is they try to do it too fast. Kind of like what we're talking about with retailers not going everywhere at once. It's super important, even if it's just 3 people. Who cares if it's only 3 people that actually truly love your product and can't stop talking about it? It starts with just like the very tiny small group. And if you can grow from 3 to 10 and 10 to 30, it starts to happen pretty quickly. But you have to create, the opportunity for people to share and for the thing to start to grow. So for us, one thing that was tremendously helpful was that I personally had already been part of the community for quite some time. So I had already been involved in lots of fun conversations online with people about keto and whether it works or whether it doesn't, or how to do it or not do it, and all that. So I already had a nice little network of people who I could reach out to and say, "Hey, I've got something I'd like for you to try. What do you think?" And that's literally what I did. Because what I shared with them was great, it caught on. Had I developed some shitty product that's just another Me Too keto bar and I sent it to all these great folks, they probably would have been like, "Oh, that's nice," and done nothing. But this was truly different from anything they had ever seen or tasted before. And then so there was a lot of excitement there. Once it got to a point where um, it was more than just 100 or so people, then I needed to find a way to, right, how do we make this from 100 to 1,000 people and still have this really fun community experience? And so that's where having some kind of platform that allows you to have everybody be a part of it and then create fun incentives around marketing the product, then that works really well. I use the platform called Brand Champ. There's others out there. I think there's one called Grin and maybe even more now that have come out. Who knows? But either way, you're in essence finding people who really truly love your product and then rewarding them for doing what they're already doing. So if somebody is on their own already reviewing your product, like whatever product you have, people are doing reviews on it. Find the people who are like, "Oh my God, this is the greatest thing ever." Bring them into your tribe, reward them for doing that, and then create a culture where that's how people get into the tribe. Rather than you're going out there trying to grow this thing and bring people in, people are trying to get into it because they're hearing all these great things about, "Oh my God." Oh, the part I left out was you can incentivize all this behavior with fun prizes and awards and the kinds of things that are important to people in that tribe. So if we're talking about the keto community, well, a ketone meter might be like a fun thing that people want to get their hands on, or an Oura ring to track their sleep at night. And all these things that might be a little bit expensive can be made available as fun prizes for people who are doing all this fun stuff. So that's how we did it. It was organic. Nobody was getting paid to post anything about us. There were rewards that they got for doing cool posts and creative things, but it was all very organic.
And I think that's counter to, and maybe the times have shifted. It's been a couple years, but maybe do you think the times have shifted? But you guys did such a great job organically, whereas now it's like, oh, in order to activate someone to make a TikTok about you, you need to pay them a certain amount. I think maybe you just built so much trust with this community that was just like, they became raving fans, diehards of the bar. That was just like, they're posting it because they enjoy it, not because you paid them some money or sent them a check to try and go do it.
And don't forget how valuable being first with something is when it comes to social currency. So even if you're a big influencer with a huge following, if you get to be the first one to break the news about some innovation that's out there, some crazy new flavor that no one's ever had, or that is social currency in and of itself. So we definitely leverage that. And I'm not opposed to if somebody has some massive following and there's a brand deal that can be done with somebody where they're going to be talking about your product or supporting your product. But I don't even think of that as influencer marketing. It's an ad. I'm buying an ad, in somebody's space, to promote my brand. Influencer marketing to me is they actually truly love your product. They can't stop talking about it, and they're putting it out there to their community, with their reputation. And if you have the right product and you do it right, you can build one heck of a community of people who are doing that without you actually having to be paying them.
Love it. And I think there's a lot of lessons to be learned from Heka. I mean, Heka was growing instrumentally, growing up to a point where it just couldn't even sustain the growth. What would you say is probably the ultimate takeaway or some of the challenges you faced towards the end of kind of winding down Heka?
Well, Heka didn't really need to be wound down. My partner and I didn't see eye to eye on what the future growth of that company should look like and be like. And so that's why that came to an end, truly. had I been able to continue to go forward in the way that I would have liked, I think it's very likely that Heka would be thriving today. And it definitely wouldn't be a keto company only, although that would still be part of probably its portfolio and its assortment. But I named it Heka for that reason. It wasn't called Heka Keto or whatever. My vision was that ultimately there's a broad assortment of healthy snacks that can help people just live longer, healthier lives. And Heka could have been a brand to do that with. But um, um, my takeaways are really good, actually. If I were to just do it all over again, I probably would change very, very little about what I did and how I did it. I would, I'd have to think better about how to structure a partnership deal with somebody if I was going to do that again in the future, so that knowing now that you can reach a point where if you're not agreeing, you can literally, two people can stop each other from going forward and then nothing happens. So knowing that, I would just be smarter about how to structure a partnership deal. But in terms of how we went to market, how we presented the brand, how we brought people into the ecosystem and allowed them to participate in how things were shaping and moving forward and all that, that was hugely fun, very enjoyable. And I'd love to do it again. The reason why I haven't is, innovation doesn't just happen overnight. Like I wouldn't just do another company just to do another company, or just it's going to make some money, or just because there's an opportunity in a certain market or something like that. I have to be like totally bought into something and super excited about the level of commitment that goes into having a baby like that, because it's like having a baby. It's a full time.
And what advice would you give to someone? Say they do have this breakthrough idea, right? Oh, cool! I want to create a new product in the category. Is it easier to bootstrap it? You got to go out and raise money. How does that play into this of like, hey, raise more than you think you need? Or is it like, just raise as little as possible? What's your perspective on that?
I would try to raise as little as possible and try to do as much on your own to establish something. If you've got a brand that's already even in business, maybe not necessarily growing or anything like that, but at least you've got a name, a brand, and sales are happening. Try to get to that point if you can, without taking any equity of any sort. And then if you can get to a point where you validated something, like this thing's like growing faster than I can possibly fund myself, so I'm going to have to bring capital in now. If you can get to that point, that would be great. If you have something already, if you don't even want to, I already know this thing's going to take off. Like I just invented how to cure baldness or something. This is going to, no matter what, it's going to take off. Well, surely at that point, it would make sense to find the right partners that help you to properly launch the thing and scale it right away. But yeah, I would try to hold off as long as possible. And then when it comes time to actually do that, take your time and shop it around. Don't necessarily jump on the first person who wants to write a check.
For sure. Now let's talk about current. I know you're involved in more projects with Ron, doing a lot of cool stuff. Talk to us a little bit about some of the stuff you're doing. You're doing some stuff in the pet food world. You're doing some stuff in innovation. What does that look like?
Well, Ron always has a million things happening. So, including right now, probably the biggest company on his portfolio that's doing the most is Legendary. So, Legendary Foods is an amazing attempt at, I think, where Quest left off, and then going from there in terms of the innovation and the types of things you're going to see coming out of the company. What you see now is but the tip of the spear. A lot of that excitement that we talked about, and a lot of that innovation that was a big part of the core of Quest, I now see that happening over on the Legendary side. And in fact, a lot of the original guys that were part of that team are not part of that Legendary team and are working next to Ron again. So pretty exciting. A lot of the cool stuff that they're going to be bringing to market over the next, call it 18, 24 months. But what else? He's got a company called Visionary Foods. It is a dog food company, although it's going to include cat food products as well. But it's pretty amazing when you think about dog food. Most people intuitively know that dogs should be primarily eating meat, in a high protein diet. That's our little dogs evolved from wolves. That's what wolves eat. That's how dogs should eat to be healthier. And then, of course, the science and the data supports that. However, when you look at the majority of the dog food that's consumed out there, most of it is made up entirely of carbohydrates or shitty proteins that are not complete proteins. And so, like kibble, which is what most people feed their dogs, that's like 70% of the market. And all kibble, virtually all kibble, is made entirely of carbohydrates. And of course, you wouldn't know that because if you right now go to your pantry or wherever you keep your dog food and you look at your dog food label, you'll see that it lists, the amount of protein and fat, but nowhere on there is going to list the amount of carbohydrates that are in that product. So it's really weird to me how we know dogs should be eating mostly protein, yet most of the dog food that's out there is mostly carbs, and it's being hidden from people. So Visionary Foods is but one of like maybe two brands, because I can't think of more than two, who make a kibble product that is entirely protein and fat, literally what your dogs should be eating. And so that's a fun innovation company that he's got going on over there that I've been trying to help with them and figuring out a way to make that go bigger and broader. I think there's a big opportunity to completely disrupt the dog food industry, which is old legacy brands that own the shelf space, have zero interest in improving their products, and are just trying to find a way to make lots of money. So hopefully we have some opportunities to build that business.
Love that. It's what I feed Scoot every morning. So love both of those companies doing incredible things. I think one of the interesting pieces, I think Visionary is doing incredible stuff. I remember hearing back when they were doing the Keto Pet Sanctuary, and that's kind of what spawned Visionary Pet. It's just a testament of who Ron is as a human.
Well, when I mentioned the data supports it, I mean, that's part of what I was thinking about. One of the research projects that Ron funded was that Keto Pet Sanctuary, where they took terminally ill dogs who were dying of cancer and put them through this ketogenic protocol and tested everything along the way and had some remarkable findings where they were able to save everyone. All these dogs were able to have their cancer reversed or tumors shrank, and all of it done through this interesting ketogenic protocol, which included this food, the Visionary food. That was so successful that they ended up duplicating the same research with humans on the epigenetic side of the business. But yeah, it's pretty amazing, remarkable stuff.
Incredible. And on the legendary side, I think it's going to be another incredible story. It already is an amazing story. Most people don't even realize. I don't even know if they still sell it on the website, but like as innovative as legendary is today, right? Like disrupting a cinnamon roll. Like who would have thought like, oh, let's make this yummy high protein cinnamon roll. What ended up starting with a Pop-Tart, then moved into a cinnamon roll. And I know you guys are working on it, but before that, it was flavored almonds and peanut butter. Like almond butters. But I think he used that as like a catalyst to what you were saying. Like, let's just create some type of business. Let's drive a little bit of revenue to really fuel the innovation that we really want, which is Pop-Tarts, cinnamon rolls. And I'm sure there's 19 other projects in the works, but like, talk about that strategy in terms of like his end game was never, let's be an almond company. It was, let's be an innovative company. Right.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of that it's crazy to me, honestly, because Legendary was started while Quest was going through its craziest in all things happening all at once phase, right? And somehow Ron has it in, I'm going to start another company off on the side here and get that going. I'm like, I don't have that kind of bandwidth in my brain or that kind of energy to take on that many things. But nonetheless, that was started almost like a side project. He put somebody trusted in charge of getting things started and off the ground. And probably, if I had to guess, the big reason for not wanting to come out of the gates with high protein snacks, as it was a way to avoid a conflict of interest with Quest, obviously. So Quest is like a high protein snack company,
Sure.
Can't have two competitive companies. So let's do some nuts and nut butters and then go from there. But
Brilliant.
even now, I mean, he could tomorrow launch a bar and go head to head with Quest if he so chose, and probably develop a better bar than Quest bars ever were. But he's off trying to do more. He likes to challenge himself. I mean, the cinnamon roll is not easy to do. I mean, Jesus Christ, the Pop-Tart, super hard to do. All of these things have required all kinds of manufacturing innovations and customizations, and working with different co-packers that have the tolerance and the patience to figure out ongoing formula changes that are going from week to week to week to week. I mean, everything's changing all the time. And whatever you're eating today, you will taste again a few months from now, and it'll be better. And sometimes the changes are so subtle that they're not even talked about or mentioned, and other times it's like a big innovation or a big leap forwarding with the way something can be made, and then they'll make a big deal about it. But yeah, that continues.
It's incredible. Now, I want to talk with you about just some different stuff. I mean, you've clearly had crazy history working with all these amazing brands, building your own brands. What are some of the biggest trends you're seeing today, right? Today's a different environment. We just went through a crazy pandemic. We're kind of in this cyclical keto craze thing. Like, what are the trends that you see today compared to any other time that you've ever seen?
Definitely more people coming to the realization that they have to take control over their health, and that they can't just leave it up to the experts. I think we learned a lot through this whole pandemic, and how we relied to, quite frankly, about vaccines and how do I go about dealing with what is a dangerous virus. And so I think more people are realizing that they need to do the research for themselves, and that there are not always our best interest in mind when it comes to the experts. So that's good. But at the same time, I also see like a big push from pharma to continue to make pharma be the answer to our health. And so when you see like weight loss drugs now becoming a trend, and I feel like it's going to be an even bigger trend. So it's like, hey, you being overweight is not a health condition you have control over. You being overweight is a disease, and we have the medicine for you. That's troubling to me. And I think, the mainstream person, the masses don't have the nutritional literacy to really sort through the endless information about how you should and shouldn't do this, or how you should and shouldn't do that. And so they just relegate it to whatever. I'll take my Ozempic medication. I'll take my high blood pressure medication. I'll take my whatever medication, and I'll be fine. So it'll be interesting to see where things lean more toward. Hopefully, more and more people taking control over their health and understanding, I need to educate myself. I need to do a little bit of my own research. I don't have to be a scientist, or a PhD or a medical doctor. I can be a regular average person, do some research, learn, and then make better decisions for my own health. So hopefully that's a growing trend.
I agree. I do think it's kind of scary to see. I mean, the Ozempic has its place, right? I think it has its place. I think it's being abused. And I think the scariest part is when you see companies like Weight Watchers and Noom just recently announced, and Noom's a huge kind of digital health company. Both of them now are using prescription Ozempic to kind of help drive their results. That to me is a bit alarming. And I think that's something that I think it will hopefully start to die out. And there's going to be a player or multiple players who rise to the top, countering that and saying, we're not going to go pharma. I'm perfectly fine if you want to use strategic supplementation to aid in that. I think that's incredible. But I think that's what it should be versus let me go pharma shot and I'm going to take it easy and still kind of not really dial everything in. I think it's a temporary Band-Aid for a problem that requires constant attention over the long term. And I think that will shake itself out in the next couple of years.
Well, life expectancy continues to be on the decline, which is super crazy to me. I mean, we should be going in the other direction. And so keeping us sick and keeping us medicated is going to be an ongoing push. I don't see changing. So we do have to get, I guess, smarter and louder about, taking control of our own health and nutrition.
Agreed. Speaking of which, I think there's things outside of supplements, food, bars, that are important for your health. One of the things that you've done recently, you moved to Hawaii. And kind of, I see the background, you're just enjoying life. How has that played an impact on your overall health? Like just completely uprooting, and you're like, I moved from LA. Now I live in Hawaii on this beautiful piece of property. Like, how's that been mentally, physically, emotionally? What's that been like?
Honestly, I can't probably put it truly into words. It's such a different lifestyle from how I was living. So, I mean, living in LA, I was near the beach, which was great, but still around a lot of commotion, a lot of noise, a lot of people, and not close enough to enough nature. And I love being around nature. And then also things were starting to get a little bit hairy in LA with the homeless population. I mean, literally, we were starting to see those encampments starting to get closer and closer to where we were living. And I was realizing, like, wow, we need to find a way to make a drastic change. And so we did. So life is very different here. I mean, I wake up and all I hear are birds in the morning singing, like tons of birds, like an incredible amount of every kind of bird you can think of is up and singing in the morning. And I typically, before I make my coffee, I'm out in the front, and I like to get my hands in the dirt right away in the morning. So I'm weeding one of the trees. So I'm always weeding. That's one of my challenges in life. The weeds are always trying to outgrow and take over my trees. So I do one or two every morning. And so by the end of the month, I've got 30 trees out in the front. All of them have been weeded one time. And so it's a very different thing to wake up to sunlight and birds chirping and my hands in the dirt and on the grass and my dogs running around freely, to the crazy chaos that I was living in LA. So and of course I'm surrounded by ocean and in nature. I'm living in a part of the island that's a rainforest, and so it's just beautiful and very tranquil. What impact that might be having on my health, who knows? I mean, it's got to be immeasurable, really. I'm kind of living with the sunrise and sunset, within those within that time frame, and my circadian rhythm is very much attuned to that now. So that's got to be super healthy and a super healthy way to live. And we're constantly exposed to good sunlight, and I don't know, night times, there's only frogs at night. There's no like loud noises and traffic and honking or any of that. So I think all of that combined for sure is in some way adding to my overall health span.
Love it.
Being active too, rather than being at a desk like I usually spent the majority of my time back in the day. Most of my day is spent doing rigorous outdoor activities. And so the combination of all that, I don't know, maybe I'm going to live 10 years longer than I did before. Who knows?
I love it, man. Two more questions until we go into our final four. One is, can you explain to people what it's like being a dad and an entrepreneur? How do you manage that? I know you and your daughter just took a trip to Colombia. I think most people don't know how to balance that or manage it. Like sometimes they go it's polar, right? Sometimes they don't put enough into their business and they solely focus on their family, which is perfectly fine, and their business will suffer. Sometimes they go all in on their business, family suffers. How do you manage that as an entrepreneur who's chasing their goals, chasing their passion, but also have a very close relationship with their kids?
It's a good question. I don't know that I ever truly mastered it. I have two girls, both are in their 20s now, so they're grown up. And when they were in their teenage years, I think that was the heyday of when I was probably the busiest with Quest. But even at my busiest and when there was the most going on and my time was the most in demand, I had some pretty steadfast rules that I never broke. Like, for example, when I traveled, I would never be gone more than 2 nights. I felt that after 2 nights, it was too much time away from the girls at a time when they were kind of growing. So that was a rule that I may have had to break twice in all the years that I was at Quest because I had to fly internationally, and so that would have been a little tougher. And you know, I just chose to make that a priority. So I was very involved in their activities when it came to sports and school and all that. Perhaps at the expense of spending more time in at work and focused on work. And I've been okay with that. So I've found success and I've been able to make some great things happen. But I'm not as successful as some of my peers. So I don't have $1 billion and I don't have like multiple $1 billion companies or whatever. And I don't want that's too much for me. The level of success that I've achieved is great, and there's actually more than I want. I still have a lot of ambition in me, but it was never at the expense of the quality time that I needed and wanted to spend with my girls. Now, as they're older, it's fascinating. I mean, they're early 20s. I very, very clearly remember being in my early 20s. Like it was yesterday in my mind frame and how I was thinking and what I was aspiring for and the challenges and things that I was having in my life at that time. And then to see that in my girls and how they're thriving and finding their own way to succeed, it's pretty cool.
That's amazing, brother. I love seeing it. And I think it's super important because most people miss that, right? They miss, I don't think there's ever truly, I think that people say, oh, it's just, you got to balance it. I think there needs to be some integration, some work-life integration. I think you've done a great job at that. And last question before we jump into our final four is, will we see Yemini Mesa jump back on the saddle and launch a new brand sometime, maybe soon, maybe in a couple of years? Do you still have that fire, that fight in you to do it?
No, I definitely do. And I think I've taken a probably good year now to not be grinding. Enough time has passed to kind of crave the grind again. So not only am I craving being in a grinding situation, but I have some ideas on some products that I think the timing could be right for. And so maybe if I can get things going, we might be looking at something hopefully for Q1 of next year.
That's exciting. I love it. I love it. All right, let's jump into our final four. I don't want to take up too much more of your time, but one is what I think I have an idea on your favorite snack, but I'll see if I'm right. What's your favorite snack and favorite meal?
Favorite snack? Well, favorite snack, but that I don't get to eat all the time because I can't fit it into my nutritional program. But if I've had this peanut butter and jelly sandwich, I could eat that at any time as a snack. So that's the one that comes to mind right now. And then favorite meal? Well, my favorite thing to eat in the whole world is pizza. I mean, so I will eat pizza anytime, but I can't eat pizza anytime. So if you were to ask me for like a non-cheat favorite meal, probably like eggs and avocado and cheese in some form or another.
I love it. The thing that came out, you've always been every time I've seen you, you're always eating macadamia nuts. So I feel like that's like your snack. Your snack. I always associate that.
You know what? That's okay. If I'm eating healthy and try not to, I should say healthy. If I'm trying to limit my carbs, that is definitely my go-to. And talk about macadamia nuts. I mean, that's part of what we plan on growing here on our property. We have mentioned earlier, like 50 trees right now, but we've yet to plant any macadamias, and so that's what's next.
I love it. What's your favorite book, or what are you currently reading right now?
Right now, I am going on a reread of Outlive, Peter Attia's recent book on longevity and lifespan. And It's good. It's a great book. If you haven't picked it up, I highly recommend it. It's He does something important, which is to remind us of the importance of having a strategy. People overlook the strategy and they go right to all the tactics of, should I drink apple cider vinegar? Should I do intermittent fasting? Those are all the tactics. What's the strategy to help you achieve whatever that goal might be? So he does a good job of laying that out as only Peter does.
I love it. I love it.
Yeah, question. I forgot. What was the second part?
No, that was it. And then what are you most excited about in your life right now?
Most excited in my life right now? Goodness. I am looking forward to being able to develop the property that we purchased out here in Hawaii in the future. I have a vision for what I want to be able to do out here, which includes building out an ohana on the far end over there. Ohana is the Hawaiian word for like a guest home. But we want to have a place where not just our family can visit, but our friends as well. And on the opposite end over there, we'd love to build a place where we can have a gym and a podcast studio, if you will, and a bit of a workspace, because it would be really neat to have this be a place that people can come out to and experience, this amazing life that we have here, even if it's just for a little bit. And so I have it in my head of bringing all this together under some sort of a podcast or something at some point in the future. But I'm excited about that. And then, the front end of this whole property is where we're planting a lot of different things. So it's nothing crazy or ambitious, but I get a lot of enjoyment and fulfillment out of seeing the fruits that we're planting growing. Like we have a lychee tree that hasn't flowered yet, but the moment that thing flowers and gives us lychee, it's going to be a glorious moment. But right now it's thriving and doing really well. So I get a lot of excitement around that.
That's amazing. Well, let me know when you have that guest house. I'll be there 100%.
100% for sure.
Last question is, what is one thing that people can do today to improve their health?
One thing that they can start doing today, if you're not already walking on most days, start walking on most days. If you're not, I'm going to go on to more. One, walking. I was going to say, then start lifting. If you're walking, then start lifting. Walking and lifting.
Walking and lifting. All right, brother. Well, thank you so much. Where can people find you? Where can people find out more about you? How can we support you, follow you? Where can we do that?
My main social platform is still Instagram. So you can find me there under my name, keto_head. So keto head in Instagram.
I love it, brother. This has been an incredible episode. We will definitely have to have you back and talk about so many more things. I'm excited for you to continue crushing it, launching something new. I appreciate you jumping on, brother. Thank you.
Thank you, man. My pleasure.